lead us in the call to order and the Pledge of Allegiance? Or would you like me to run that?
I'll let you do it.
Okay. All right. Those members, I believe, do we have to do it by?
You shouldn't have to do roll call.
We shouldn't have to do roll call. Okay. I wasn't sure because we were still streaming it,
We've
so.
always streamed it, so
Okay.
there's nobody virtual tonight.
Okay, we have Mr. Shaw, Mr. Turflinger, and Mr. Hensley present. And let's please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have no emergency additions or deletions, so we'll just move to discussion and information, which is our 2021 budget that Mr. Markham will present.
Okay, just as I had presented at the regular board meeting in September, we're just conducting a public hearing that we have to do by statute for the budget process. So everything that you had in that regular board meeting, nothing has changed, but did want to put up the notice to taxpayers that is online and is on our webpage and is in the window as well. Just recapping those numbers. In our debt service, we are looking at $2,245,866, and in our education fund, we're looking at $10,169,466, and then in our operations, $3,825,000, which brings our total to request $16,235,652. In comparison to last year's budget, this is about $240,882 less than what we requested a year ago for our budget. So the 21 budget is a little bit less. As we know, the DLGF will take our submitted budget once it is approved at the October board meeting, and then they'll rework all those numbers, and obviously they'll probably reduce, and then they'll create the tax rate and all those things off of that. So we are pretty much in line of where we've been budget-wise in years past. And again, as I've stated before, much of our education fund dollars go to salaries and benefits, about 80% of it. And then in our operations fund, about 1.7 million of that is employee benefits and salaries. Yes?
Do we have this in an email or something where we can open it up? I can't read this.
Yeah, it would have been in your board packet for the September board meeting, all of that information. I can resend that all to you so that you have that, but that should be in your September regular board meeting information, all those sheets and forms as well.
Dave, do you just want the numbers? Is that what you're interested in? I can,
Yeah, there you go.
I can blow that up a little bit. Does that get what you need? I don't have the numbers. That's it right there.
Have we increased the amount going into the emergency fund, the rainy day fund for this? This is for 21.
This is 2021. We did not do anything with rainy day. This is just for education, operations, debt service that we have to request those funds for the 21 budget. So if we would have a surplus of funds left over that we could put into the rainy day from the 20 budget.
Are you understanding what he's saying, Mr. Turflinger?
Like, we don't request funds for the rainy day fund for the 21 budget.
Right. It's only when we have a surplus at the end of the,
So we would never do that?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
It's just whatever's left over you can,
Right, just
okay.
part of the budget process.
So the bond that was passed the other night, no ramifications on this budget? Or there
Yes,
is?
it is, and it's built in, and I built in, at the time I had to create the budget, I had to build in a dollar amount. So I just built in a $995,000 amount like we did for the roof. Now, we know it's only gonna be $670,000 is what we passed the bond for. So those monies will come out of the budget once we get the bond, and then we have to let the DLGF know what our actual bond number is at the end, and then they'll make those adjustments on our budget for us. So, which will then impact, and so the tax rate should be a touch lower than what it would have been if we did a 995 or whatever. So I have to build it in advance so that those numbers are in there, and then when the DLGF provides us with our final budget order, the 1782 notice, then we can go in and say, if that notice would come to us before that bond sells, we would say, here's our dollar amount, and then they'll make those adjustments on their end. So it would reduce our budget amount, our ask.
On this recovery bond, recouping these operations dollars, the $900,000 that we're recouping to put into operations,
Yes.
Why are we only asking for 900, why are we only asking for 675 when we identified?
Yeah, I mean, we could have identified a lot more. We were just asking for the 670, kind of the lower amount at the time, to make up for that shortfall in the enrollment.
Is this a one-time recovery from the state? Do we only get to do this once?
I mean, we could do it yearly if that's what we felt was in our best interest to do. But at this point, it would just be one thing, one time for us that we're doing right now to help us with our shortfall and the loss that we know that we're going to have in the enrollment from the education side.
So really, we could get the 900,000 and put 300,000 in the rainy day fund, the Hoosier fund. That's where we're storing it, right?
Yeah.
That's at 0.47%. If we're borrowing at 1%, we're still legal, right?
Yes, we would be.
You and I and several others had conversations this week about the tax cap, property tax cap. Do you have information to share?
I'm going to meet, have a call with Baker Tilly later this week on some of that information to get more detailed information on their end and what that would look like.
Mr. Markham, can you kind of clarify that a little bit for me? Because I think I understand how that would work, but, and maybe you don't have the answers until that call, but my understanding is that those that hit that cap obviously aren't going to pay us their taxes. Therefore, we're not going to bring in enough to cover the interest payments on that loan. Therefore, that whatever we're short would just come out of operations. Is that the overview?
Yes, correct.
Okay.
That's how I understand it, but I want to make sure my understanding of it is correct. After I talk with Baker Tilly, I want to make sure that's how I'm understanding it as well.
And is it at all possible to get an idea of how much we might be looking at, or is that not something that we
I'm
can?
not sure. That's what I'm going to ask him
Okay.
as well, kind of what that looks like. And I'm not sure, yeah, like some of the information I received that they don't feel like we're going to hit those tax caps, but, you know, we don't know that for certain. But
Well, I mean, some people are already at the cap.
yes, some people
Yeah.
will. They don't feel the majority by any means will. But we know, yeah, some people will, and that can affect, obviously, the income that comes to you. And, yeah, that would be altered through operations.
Darren Bates is hired by the county. He's an neutral party. He doesn't get paid by intergovernment entity other than the county. His services are provided to anybody that levies taxes, and these caps all pertain You know, even if what we do doesn't put the rest of the community at the caps, if the town raises due to COVID, if they raise taxes, if the fire department raises taxes, we could end up getting hit a lot harder.
Sure.
You
Yes.
know, the
Yeah.
information I have right now is the city of Wabash is taking $500,000 a year out of their operations fund to pay their debt service. And I don't know, I just really think that we need to rethink this whole process here and get the information before we make this decision.
Well,
I mean,
and unfortunately, part of that is we'll never really know the true numbers on the tax cap or who could hit it when you're doing all these different bonds and things. But again, the previous conversation I had with Baker Tilly, they just felt that this small amount that we're asking for shouldn't put, 85% of the population at their tax cap by any means. Now, if you were talking bigger dollars, a couple $1 million, then you'd be flirting with that. And yes, you are correct, yeah, the town of North Manchester and the libraries and all of those other entities, obviously everyone's asking for as much as they can get, and so everyone asks for more money, knowing that the DLGF's gonna adjust that. That's just kind of been the practice of budgeting, because it's unfortunately not an exact science on how we have to do it. So they give us the forms and the formulas and all those things and it just kind of spits it out to us. So we put in a little bit higher, hoping maybe we can get it, but we know that we probably won't get all of what we request.
so what does that do for us down the road with our debt service then?
Typically, they fund the debt service. They're going to fund the debt service probably before they would fund the operations. But at this point, we seem to fall in where we should be able to recoup what we need in revenue to cover our debt service. And like I said, our debt service what we requested will be a little bit less since we only went after $670,000 bonds, so that amount will go down. That's currently shown there in our debt service and what we're requesting. I just can't make those changes right now. I have to go through this budget process and let the DLGF make those adjustments.
So along that line with the bond, option 4 is basically, so the board approved the bond. And under cost saving measures, attrition, potential rift, so that 670 is our bridge, right? That's what you're saying. Implement additional energy cuts, implement marketing strategies, continue with CNA and remote learning, coordinated positions, strategic planning process, keep programming options for students, reevaluate after 1 year. That's kind of the bullet points under that option. When is it that I'll understand the 670 where it's going to be spent? Because I guess that was my no vote the other night, and that's my deal there. Are we planning on spending some of this in the strategic process where we can, where it fits? Are we, we've got negotiations with teachers. That's kind of my thing on this, is to understand, and that's not my decision, it's yours. But I think, as a board, that was one of the problems with voting, to approve that the other night, is I kind of, $670 is a good chunk of change with where we're at with our cash balance, the savings fund, so,
It is our intent to use those funds for salaries and benefits and any operational costs and to help our cash flow, because we know as we get through to probably April, May next spring, after the state starts taking away our education dollars because of enrollment, that it's going to get tight with cash flow. And so it's our hope to utilize that bond money to help continue with salaries, benefits. We know we're going to negotiate with our teachers here soon, and it just gives us some options there. So that's our intent. It's not to go out and do lavish things with the money, that's for sure. And if we're able to be in a good spot come next spring, and the state goes through their legislation and they do the new budget for the next 2 years, and they increase education dollars, which would be great if they do. I'm not sitting here thinking that they are. I'm thinking they're going to probably cut. That's my gut feeling, and that's how I have to look at it. that it would give us at least those reserves if they do cut to help us get going for the next 6 months beyond the end of the spring. So that's how I look at those funds, just to be protective of our cash flow, and especially in our education fund where we could use up our cash reserves by the time we get to next spring, just because of our enrollment.
Well, I have no consideration it's gonna be a lavish spend or anything like that, but, you know, when I look at that strategic process, and as we heard, you know, there were some similar things with facilities that, you know, need to be funded different, but I did hear things where we could spend money in a classroom, and that's just the point, you know?
Sure.
And you said the magic word, student enrollment growth, so I'm just, you know, investment is just the key word, so, okay, thank you.
Yes.
You know, I brought up a lot of questions the other night in that meeting that we couldn't answer, and I still haven't heard an answer on why, as a board, we feel like we need to do this right now. You know, you said that there was the only pitfall was we were gonna pay a 1% interest if we wait till after the first of the year, when, you know, half a dozen to a dozen of these questions, and we can make an informed decision. You know, you know, it was a late night, everybody was tired. I really think we need to go back and rethink this thing. Get the answers on the tax, I don't mean to cut you off. The tax caps, the interest rates, you know, who's gonna be, you know, what happens if we do this and we turn right around, you know, we're gonna pay Baker Tilly one way or the other. But what happens if the state went from $2.5 million surplus to $500,000 right now? So what happens when the election's over and they cut education funding by 10%, and now instead of $6,200, we're getting $5,200 a kid? Now we're gonna be right back to, you know, I mean, aren't we being cost effective by waiting?
Well, I mean, there's different ways to look at that, and it's my philosophy, and Dr. Grimaud and I talked about a lot of those things. The tax caps are always gonna be there. I mean, whether you do it now or you do it in the spring, you're gonna affect tax caps no matter what, because those are always affected year after year. So if we wait, we may not be able to get as much money than as we act now, because if everyone else is trying to get more money, and everyone else does bonds in the spring because they're short cash flow, that could drive rates, and that could create a shortage too in taxes. So just trying to be cognizant of tax rates as well. I felt that if we acted now, it just put us in a better position to be prepared if more does happen down the road. And we'll still consult with Baker Tilly and see, are there other ways that we can consolidate maybe some of our other debt and get rates. But we may not be able to do that until after the first of the year and look at those things. So I hate to, for lack of a better term, chase ghosts, I guess, to say, on things, but also kind of try to look at the big picture and see how it could be impacted if we waited. We know the tax rate's going to increase whether we do it now or we do it later. I just feel better having those monies in hand earlier than later, because I know the tax caps could get hit just as much in the spring as well. So I guess it's just a different way to look at things, and that's how I look at it.
And I also would throw in there, I would hesitate going into contract negotiations without knowing we would be getting this money. It would be very, very difficult for us to even consider giving a raise when we don't know what will happen, whether you will approve it in the spring, what. And we are right now getting ready to negotiate. And as well as Baker Tilly, this was their recommendation as well, and a lot of it had to do with, there may be more people trying to get bonds in the spring, and be a lot less tax money to be able to fund those, so.
Is it a fair statement to say that even with this funding, you'll continue to look at kind of right sizing?
Sure. Oh, yeah.
Absolutely, I mean,
Yeah, we're gonna have to.
We did, you know, that's why we wanted to do the roofs. We felt like we wouldn't have the students to support what we had, and we looked at all across all levels and tried to figure out what we could do without, so absolutely. I was talking to a principal about that today.
So are we gonna reach out to Darren Bates and get a neutral opinion, or are we just gonna?
Well, I had talked to Darren prior to our meeting, whenever we discussed the bond. Well, I guess that was a week ago, I guess that was. So I had talked with him on the phone as well, just to get a better understanding of what we were looking at within our taxing district and things. So, yeah, I have talked to him personally.
And I believe you shared that information with Baker Tilly, and
Yeah.
that's what they're reviewing, and that's what the conversation will be about. You said
Yes,
Thursday?
yeah.
I don't believe we discussed in the last meeting on this bond what the number of years of the bond would be.
Right.
Do we have any thoughts on that, or when will that be determined?
I do have a message into them to find out exactly when we need to have that determined by, and I didn't hear back from him yet. But we had it, let me see if I have that with me here. I know we had it a 1 to 3 year repayment on that. I was trying to find what those numbers were here.
While you're looking for that, do we have time to have an executive session and get Mr. Bates to come in and paint the whole picture for the whole board so that we can take a look at this decision? I don't feel like we have all the information. That's why I voted no. I know we're gonna have to do it at some point.
A 2-year repayment was looking at a tax rate of about 8 cents. A 3-year repayment was about 5 cents.
Right, I saw that paper, I was just kind of wondering
Yeah. I
when and how that decision was going to be made.
Yeah, we will have to make that decision, and that was something I was gonna, as long as we can stretch it up to the next board meeting. And the October regular board meeting would be a place where we could make that decision.
Yeah, again, I would suggest, from my point of view, to me, it makes sense to stretch that out fairly far, beyond 3 years, in my opinion, but, that would keep that tax rate down. Again, when, Mr. Turflinger pointed out, the money that we get in, we can actually invest and get almost 0.5% back on, so that extra interest is pretty minimal. And what we can keep those taxes down for our community, and maybe not so many, that many fewer people are going to hit that cap by doing it that way as well.
No more questions, more discussion?
Yeah, do we have time to do an executive session with Mr. Bates to inform the whole board before we handcuff the boards of the future with this?
I don't believe that's one of the acceptable items that we can do an exec session for, but you can certainly do it in public.
Okay.
Yeah, we could see if he could Skype or Zoom in, maybe at the next board meeting. I can reach out and see what information that he may be able to provide to everyone that would help the board make decisions.
Well, I would also say in the meantime, you're going to be calling Baker Tilly. You have that same information, share that with the board, and then if you feel like you still need that, then we can certainly make sure that happens.
I'll tell you what, a little training on the whole budget cycle for new board members, since we'll have some new board members, probably wouldn't be a bad idea for next year, to be
Sure.
honest, so.
Yeah, I agree.
Maybe we can videotape it or something, or.
Jeremy, you talked about DLGF, and we're asking for 600 and some thousand. Well, we identified 900,000. Is there a percentage calculation in there? I'm sorry, this thing's echoing with this plastic here.
Oh, that's right.
Is there a formula or something that they use? You know, is there a reason that we can't get it all, or?
Well, it was just our intent to try to get the amount of money that we were short, the enrollment shortfall. I mean, that's how I looked at this going in, not asking for too much money and just trying to get us through what our enrollment shortfall was gonna be. And that's why I use that $670,000 figure. One, obviously the higher we go, the more the rate goes up and those type of things. So just trying to be fiscal responsible there and not asking for more than what we felt we really needed at the time. And so that's why we went with that 670 mark and not anything higher. But I built it in higher just to be safe as I prepare the budget as we were going along in this process. So like I said, what that amount in the debt service will actually be lowered because we're not asking for 995,000, we're asking for 670.
Let me ask this question. You had about 20 days built into your timeline from when we were gonna receive the money till the end of the year. Is there a way to get all of this ready and wait to pull the trigger until after the election? Not so much our board election, I'm talking about the national election and find out what happens in Indianapolis. That's my concern.
Yeah, I know. I would say, and just, this is a gut feeling, that Ice Miller would say that they want to sell those bonds as soon as possible. But, let me look at the timeline here. They have right now the bond sale happening November 11th on this timeline. And most of these things this is timed out because of the publication and advertising and things that you have to do for the bond fits in this routine. So if it gets delayed, then that pushes everything back. And obviously they know when the best time to go after bonds are. And so that time before Thanksgiving break and Christmas seems to be the best time to get bonds, and rates are lower and those type of things. So, but I would have to consult with them on that. They're the expert on that, not me.
Thank you.
Yep.
Is there more discussion? I'm unsure if the board is done discussing or if you need more time.
No, I think we're done. You good, Dave?
Well,
You done discussing?
yeah, I'm done discussing.
Hearing of patrons? Superintendent comments?
I really have no comments at this time, other than we have an exec session next Monday at 7:00. And if you need to do Zoom, let me know, otherwise we'll plan on being here. I just sent that out, I think it was today, right? It's not a lot of emails, so I'm trying to decide if it was yesterday or today, but yes, just a reminder.
School board comments?
I just apologize, I lost track of, I thought this meeting was moved, so it was a complete unintentional late arrival. So, sorry to fellow board members, Jeremy and Teresa.
I apologize too. I just lost track. Other school board comments?
Yeah, I got one. I just want to make it a matter of public record that this financial mess is on this board. It is not on Dr. Grimeau or Jeremy in any way, shape, or form. This mess was created a long time ago, and it wasn't addressed. That's all I got.
Any more school board comment? Then the meeting's adjourned. Thank you.